Okay, guys. Coach, just to kind of give a little, so you can direct, and then we'll do it any way you want to ask a question, of course. But Stephen will direct principally about the way the draft was falling, organized, what we were thinking, any trade possibility, what have you. Stephen can handle most of that. Mike, Coach, how do you see using them? What can we be doing with them? And generally, I'll just say that obviously the way it fell was defense for us. We're not through yet. But as it turns out, we couldn't be more pleased that the emphasis of the draft and the side of the ball that we're addressing on the draft is working out for us, that it's our defensive players. So any questions you might have?
Was there any consideration during any of these picks to take an offensive player, or did just every way just felt you're like, this is the defensive player is the best guy that's there?
Yeah, we considered it, especially there in the third round. We looked at a couple of situations, but we decided to, obviously take the player we picked. But we were certainly thinking offensive lineman in particular we might take a look at, and a receiver as well that were in play there. But as it turned out, the defense ended up ruling the day.
Did they get close to move up at all in round 3?
We decided, with those having 5 picks in the top 100 was going to be really good for us. And obviously when you move up there high in first, second, or third round, you're probably talking about giving one of those picks up. And we just really felt good about the board and really felt we'd come away with 5 good players rather than 4 versus moving up. There was some tempting times that you thought about it, but overall we felt really good, overall that we wanted to take, pick the 5 picks.
Jerry, in the time you've on the team, you all have never started with 5 defensive players. Is there any clearer way to send the message that the defense is where you need to improve?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things you could interpret from this. Unfortunately, we didn't need to send any messages. It's pretty well known where we might need to be doing some addressing. But this was not a design to, and I'm not taking it literally, but it wasn't designed to send any interpretation of how we felt about things. This has improved the very best way we could, this team. And it will, to the extent that the way we're approaching where we go this year is reflected here and is reflected in these players. This day and time, you really need to get help in the draft. The very nature of the structure, the cap, all of the things that are involved. We've got to use this draft now and in the future to really do a lot of things for us. And that's certainly to have players that can play immediately but build in the future. And obviously, these are some of the best values, maybe the very best value of how to manage your cap and manage your resources is through the draft, and this is why these guys were chosen.
Mike, you talk about Joesph and what you expect for him at cornerback, and clearly he and Wright, long, lean type cornerbacks for Quinn's system.
I think number one, coming out of the off season, you go through an evaluation, something we talked a lot about as a football team. We had 106 days of evaluation before the off-season program started, and the thing that just keeps coming up over and over and over again is you'd never have enough length or speed. So, as you look at these selections, I think it's clearly evident. You start with Kelvin. Obviously, I was at his workout in Kentucky. Have some people there at Kentucky that were very instrumental in giving us insight on his experience there at Kentucky. So, a tremendous athlete. I think just his physical skills are something that just really stood out to us, not only on film and his year there, but his opportunity playing corner, but in the workout that day. So, Deshaun Wright, love his length, and I really like his path. through his career, the receiver skills. Dan Quinn actually was up at the Oregon State workout, and we loved the tape going into it, and his ability to play with length, but also to go track the ball. Some of our guys compared him to Trayvon as far as his ability to track the football. So I think both those young guys, bring us two excellent players that will compete in the secondary.
How do you see Osa?
I think he's
interior-wise.
I'm sorry?
How do you see Osa in the interior?
I mean, Osa and Chauncey, I think definitely both bring different dimensions. Going back to length. I mean, you look at the length. Osa gives us the pass rush. He could play the 3, the 4, the 5, even go further inside, and some sub rush from the lower shade or one technique. And Golston is the power player. Will play more to our base side. He could play the 3, but also I think it'll be a power player for us in the 4-eye technique, the 5, and out to the 6. So just two young studs. Give us length. Give us some more juice there, and we feel really good about our depth now in our front. So I was really excited about getting both those big guys.
Osa and Parsons both have a history in wrestling. I mean, is that just a coincidence, or do you guys some coaches really like wrestling when it comes to defensive players specifically?
Well, we're big fans of the WWE, so I mean that's exactly what I'm trying to. This is show business, right, Jerry?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, I mean I think it definitely helps. I mean it's not something that. I think it's, I like multi-sports athlete. I think anytime a player has multi-sport experiences in his background, I think that's definitely a plus. I mean, it shows his versatility. I think particularly when you get into perimeter players or hand-eye coordination, you can see it with the guys in basketball, baseball, and those types of things. And definitely when you're playing in the leverage opportunities, particularly in offense, defensive front, I think a wrestling background is excellent. I think it's definitely good to have on your resume.
Steve, obviously you picked up a pick yesterday with that trade. As you went through day 2 in that 3rd round, just what did that allow you to do beyond, being able to pick up an extra players in terms of being able to get the guys that you were hoping to get all today instead of carrying into round 4 and waiting whether or not a guy would be available?
Well, I mean, obviously it gave you an opportunity if you wanted to do it is package it with another pick and get up. But we just decided, the way the draft was falling and the way our board was falling, it's just going to give you an extra player. And like you said, we still have, our 2 4s sitting there tomorrow. First thing we think will be really good football players again. If you get into the 5th, 6th, and 7th, it's later, so hard to predict for sure. But I just think it gave us a great opportunity to improve our defense. And, as I said last night, I mean, the best way to help our salary cap are for these 5 players to come in here and make a difference. And in some cases, certainly replace players that would have normally cost you quite a bit more money. So, it's a very much a positive that we were able to pick up that 3rd round pick.
You said the broadcast briefly today that the team was considering a move all the way up to early 2nd round. Is that accurate? Was there a real attempt there?
Yeah.
Mike, considering your background as an offensive coach, is it tricky to sit there this year, or what was it like sitting there and seeing all these defensive guys come to you?
I'll say this: I thought the discipline that was present, yesterday and today is something is a big part of our success in these 5 selections. I think it's a challenge to sit there and stay the course and do that, and I think we definitely benefited from it. But no, I mean, we still talked about a number of offensive players, but this is the best for our football team.
Stephen, been here with your dad since '89. Do you agree that it's just more coincidental it was all defensive guys, or do you kind of sort of see that the offensive pieces are in place and you've kind of seen it that way?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, there was obviously very much an emphasis on improving on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you look at the offense, where our resources are from a cap standpoint, from where we've spent draft picks. It's been on the offensive side of the ball. And, you look at, the results from last year. We just felt like we had a great opportunity to improve the football team going into the draft with 10 picks, and now we have 11. And, when it's all said and done, I think we'll be close to picking 11 players, and I think it was probably a little long overdue. that the board fall right, and we were able to pick the defensive guys. Now, once again, that poor safety position missed out again, but it never fails. We were right there thinking about it a couple times, but it didn't work out. But no, I think going in, obviously, our emphasis was defense. And like I said, we did also consider a couple offensive guys along the way, but didn't quite work out.
Did the Raiders get the guy you wanted there right before you? Did they trade up and take Merrick? Was he a guy that was interested?
I'm sure they think that, but as you know, corner was real important to us to get a corner in this draft. And as much as we loved the player the Raiders got, we were pretty focused on getting a corner.
Kelvin Joesph, he played only 20 games at college. Parsons, 26 with the opt-out after, being not an off-ball linebacker in high school. That's not a lot of time on task for those two guys. Is that a concern at all when you evaluate them, just that there wasn't a ton of collegiate experience at their respective positions?
I mean, that happens sometimes, especially when you're talking about, gifted, blue type traits, long athletes who are really good at what they do. You got to project it a little bit. And obviously with Micah and then again with Joesph, they certainly, when you look at their traits and then the film, the work they put on tape, it was very compelling.
Would you say most of the guys, they have a little edge to them?
I'll let Mike.
Oh, yes, go ahead. They have a little edge to them? Well, they better on defense. I mean, no, absolutely. No, I think length, speed, tempo, competitiveness. I mean, those are all things that we're looking for, and I think every one of these guys fit the bill. I mean, our energy, we need to start the season, the way we finished in certain areas, and I think these young guys bring that to the table.
Did the pro days have more sway this year in the process because you didn't see some guys play a lot of football and your eyes weren't on them as much as they had been through your scouts even?
I know from my personal perspective, I think it was a little, I don't want to call it a crapshoot. It was just, it was up and down. You had more information on one player than you had on the other, and I think just the discipline in this whole evaluation process has been just trust the information that you have. Let's not overreact to the COVID. I mean, not overreact to how many games they played. I mean, you can look at it either way. I mean, he didn't play many games, but, I look at it, the guy has a higher ceiling. So, I mean, it's just how you view the information that was available. And I think our personnel department and the whole evaluation process, we stuck to our guns and we were disciplined and, taking the picks and just frankly, we really knew the players we picked. We felt really good about the guys that we picked, and we felt really good about the guys that we wanted to pick. And I think that's the discipline in this year of all years.
Along those lines, you talked about before the draft medically, the questions going into this draft, a little more uncertainty. What's your confidence in your full grasp of where all these guys are that you've taken so far, where they are medically? Do you know for certain, or you wait until they get to the building and to really feel like you have a strong feel of that?
I mean, it's not what it normally is. I mean, there's no question about that. But I feel from my chair, I feel good about the information that our medical staff and Will McClay and his staff have put together, and we'll obviously get these players here in the rookie orientation, and we'll obviously know more then.
I don't think we really got into a player. The last 2 days that we had concerns about medically. I mean, there were some players we would have taken that might have been a little, question mark or two, but felt good enough to do it. But with the guys we took, for the most part, felt really good about where they were medically.
There are two things. Number one, you can not have the information. And so that's one degree of ambiguity or one degree of uncertainty. And then there's having the information and having uncertainty and then making a decision knowing there's uncertainty. In other words, they've been examined, there's a maybe there. And so you have two different sets of circumstances. And I think that to the extent that there are injury issues involved in any of the players that we've picked, we're aware of everything. And that's the first one that I talked about, aware. Do you have pluses and minuses in this game relative to health and individual human beings, of course. But I, too, feel good about it. One of the things, I'm looking at a list up here, and it shows our picks by round. And one of the things that jumps out at me is the fact that their bottom three picks are obviously the third-round picks. Well, if you had decided you wanted to obviously do some trading and get in that area pretty good, then you wouldn't have that group down there. So that when we got to that group down there, we had anticipated there being some players that we really thought could help the Cowboys in the future. And so we got there, and sure enough, they were there, and we hadn't used the picks up here to maybe change the looks up there. And that was the reason why you didn't do it, because you knew later in this draft you had some really outstanding players down here. And the facts are that when we made the last pick in the third round, when we made that last pick, we had 6 different players that we really were in debate over as to how we wanted to use the pick. So that's a good thing, is what I'm talking about. And it's a good thing as we go into tomorrow. And it gives us the kind of feeling we're describing up here tonight. We did the right thing by staying to our way we had our guys described and not getting over anxious. There probably wasn't any player that we had thought that we might have an interest in that we couldn't have gotten had you been able to not want to spend some of these 3 down here.
Mike, is Golson an end or a tackle?
Well, I mean, if you want to put him on a depth chart, we'll put him at end. But I mean, he has the ability to play 3 technique, a 4 technique inside a tackle, 5 outside shade, inside shade, and a 10. So, what do you want to call him? Well, he's I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, but he has defensive end characteristics, but also go down and play the 3, based on down and distance and how we think they're going to play. So,
Stephen, is the I don't know if cap crunch is the right way to say it, for another 2-year thing, or when do you think it all kind of gets back to what you thought it was going to be before this pandemic?
Well, I mean, you followed it. I mean, we're very pleased with how our media deals worked out. A lot of it's going to depend, which we feel so optimistic about in terms of getting back to normal, having full stadiums, which we think is going to happen. And when that happens, pretty much the issue is just, the lost revenue from last year, which we're certainly seeing evidence of that in this year's cap. But, at some point, obviously, here, once you start filling the stadiums up again, and I think it'll be this year, we're so optimistic, then, hopefully everything will get back in a rhythm, and you'll make up for the revenue that we lost in 20, and hopefully there you go. But certainly I think everybody's feeling the effects of there is a salary cap, and you just get used to those steady bumps, and obviously this year we went backwards and in terms of the amount of cap room that we have to spend, and I think all teams feel that. And that's why this draft and why we really emphasized taking all our picks, because the draft is your lifeblood in terms of offsetting when you pay your great players like Dak, like Zeke, like Tyron, like D-Law. Your draft picks are what offset that.
How much did Dan Quinn and the way he likes to play defense influence the players that y'all pick?
Well, I think like anything, I mean, I look at it 2 ways. You need to set your personnel boards and your player profiles, so you have a historical sense to get the grading and the placement of the players. That obviously gives you an opportunity to value the player better and get your board right for the competition of draft day. Now, how you do that is the defense and the offense come in and you build profile tapes, and you sit down with the scouting department and we collaborate and we come up with a profile for each position. So I think obviously, offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, the profiles of how we want to play in conjunction with the personnel department is how we view how the players will be used and the characteristics you like to have in that player.
Jerry, I was going to ask you something similar to what Clarence just asked Mike about. A lot of the picks tonight, people are, oh, that's a Dan Quinn pick. That's a Dan, the scheme. How would you summarize his impact, Dan's impact in the picks that have been made to this point, trying to shape it to exactly what he wants to do here?
Yeah, I will tell you, and I'm not being in any way defensive. Okay, we are excited to have Dan Quinn and feel fortunate to have him as our defensive coordinator on a going forward basis. It was unbelievable, Mike McCarthy, who has known as a having an offensive bent, how much he was influencing taking this defensive group that we took today as we were sitting there. And so it was just, matter of fact, it was commented on and directly in there. But the point is that certainly we want to have on the same page. We certainly are going to be on the same page as far as what we're trying to do schematically and how to coordinate it with what we're doing as a team. But on the other hand, it is critical to us that we have coordinated the kinds of players that do that the best, do what he's doing the best. And so that is we've always tried to have our coaches involved in what we do, and not only setting the draft board, but in personnel. We've always tried to do that. It isn't always the case in clubs around the league, but we've always tried to do it. When you have people of the stature of Dan Quinn and you have Mike and you have the kinds of people that are doing this, then they are very impactful.
Along those lines, how much of your mindset has been on the defense based on what happened last year and trying to basically fix what happened last year?
I mean, I talked about it in the postseason press conference. Every year you have to take a hard look and you have to either make changes, adjustments, and emphasize and expand on what you've already accomplished. I mean, this is part of the change. I mean, this is clearly part of the change and the advancement of how we want to look as a football team, how we want to play as a football team. And not only that, we want competition all the way through our building, especially most importantly in the locker room. So we're going to have an extremely competitive, hopefully the OTAs, but more importantly, a very competitive training camp. And that's all you can ask for as a coach.
Jerry, every time the draft room cam showed you guys, it seemed like you guys were having a good time. It seemed like you were happy about the picks you made. I was wondering how you would compare it to how you feel or you felt after the first 3 rounds last year. It was obviously well publicized that you guys did really well with the Trayvon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb and Gallimore. How does this year through the first 3 rounds compare to the way you felt last year through the first 3 rounds?
Well, I think that it was different. We're together this year. We were remote last year, and I don't know if that's what you're alluding to, or are you alluding to the results? The results. Okay, great. Well, we were pretty happy about number 88 last year when we got him, and this year. We had to coordinately, we had to make adjustments as we came in with some things that we had thought might come our way relative to the early corners. And so all of those things are reflected in the expressions that you might see in a draft room on your face. At the end of the day, though, to have gotten a player like Parsons, and then to have followed that up with the kind of day that we had today, which we got to see and feel as far as our attitude and how we were smiling or not smiling on a deal when we came through and ended up with our 3rd round picks today, our second, of course, pleased as well. It made it a very fun day.
Yeah.
Made it a very rewarding day, and one that I wouldn't want to try to redo here.
Is that it? I'm just kidding.
Stephen, now that you're closer to the end and the beginning, how do you see the backup quarterback thing as it relates to the draft?
Well, the only thing I always add to personnel, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, we're always looking to improve our roster, not only quarterback, but any other position on the team. And, a lot of times after the draft, people draft quarterbacks, they let other quarterbacks go. But in general, I'd let Mike speak to, obviously, he's been around a lot of great quarterbacks and knows what we're looking for on the offensive side of the ball. So I'll let you speak to that, Mike.
Definitely. I mean, it goes back to the earlier answer. We want competition, especially in that room. So, I mean, if there's an opportunity to continue that, we'll definitely do it. I think really what we've concentrated on the last 2 weeks is a coaching staff, particularly Kellen and Doug, is just to make sure that room's totally on the same page. Because, we didn't have Dak in there last year. So now that we're able to have the virtual meetings and, get the coaching and the footwork and all the basic fun. So we're getting to go through some things at the detail and in depth as we haven't had the opportunity to, and, as I was accustomed in the past. So getting that room set has been really good the last 2 weeks. And obviously having Dak as the lead man in there. But yeah, I think if the opportunity presents itself to add competition, I think we definitely look at that.
Steve, you guys led the NFL for this draft in compensatory picks. That won't be the case next year's draft. Does that make you more inclined on day 3 if an opportunity comes to trade back and pick up more picks next year to do so, either just to have more picks next year or perhaps use that as a trade to get a veteran or just give yourself more versatility down the road?
Yeah, I think if it makes sense, we would. I mean, we had an opportunity today to move back and pick up a next year's pick in one incident. But it didn't necessarily make sense because we didn't want to risk losing the player we were going to pick. And, there's other ways to accumulate picks. We were having long discussions how competitive this roster is going to be. And we may have, with these young players, we have some opportunities to make trades, in the preseason there. So, there's a lot of ways to acquire picks. I still think we'll end up with a few compensatory. We won't lead the league this year, probably. And the number of picks we actually get, in terms of the compensatory situation. But I do believe that we'll end up with a good number of draft picks, and we'll see where we end up.
Stephen, to piggyback on what Mike said about the depth, interior defensive line, can you just talk about the foundation you guys are building there? The last 3 drafts, a lot of picks devoted to that group, Tristan Hill, Neville Gallimore. Has that been a conscious effort to try to? Yeah,
I think you're always wanting to improve your defensive front seven. I mean, it's obviously so important, especially the defensive line. And, obviously that's been where we've focused because we seem to never end up with a safety in a draft. So, but in all seriousness, I do think there is a focus there to always continue to bring them along because other thing that's an issue at the end of the day is is paying those guys when they get free. And certainly with our cap situation, we've got to be cognizant of that. And anytime we can add good defensive linemen, we're always looking to do that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.